You're in a coffee shop on a Sunday morning. You look around, people scrolling on their phones, chatting over lattes. But across the street, a smartly dressed group hurries to church. Here's the question. Are the people going to church the only real Christians? It strikes you that many of the people around you in the coffee shop might identify as Christian. Maybe at least one person you know definitely does. But their Sunday rituals couldn't look more different? How can that be? This observation isn't trivial. The question of who qualifies as a true Christian has divided families and launched revolutions, and ushered in whole new Christian denominations. What even is a true Christian anyway? What do you think? Is it the righteous dude who turns up at church every week in his Sunday best? What about Barbara from across the street who receives Holy Communion twice a week, wafer and wine at the ready? Or elderly George, who spends most of his time at the bar, has never set foot in a church, never muttered a word of prayer or joined a worship session? I mean, he believes in God, so could he be called a Christian? I'm not just splitting theological hairs here, although I do like doing that sometimes. This question cuts through to the very core of Christianity, and it's been squabbled about since the time of Jesus' crucifixion. Some people might say, of course, George isn't a real Christian, right? For many Christians, worship is right up there, front and centre. It's how they connect with God, strengthen their beliefs, and how they experience fellowship with others. Some people insist that you cannot be a true Christian without worship, and it's not negotiable. And they have some evidence from the Bible to back them up. Let's take this verse from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus promised to be there when the group are hanging together. He said, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I with them." And what about Hebrews 10:25? In his letter, St. Paul urged Christians not to ghost their church group. He told them, "Do not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing." And then there's communion. It originates from the Latin communio, which means sharing in common or mutual participation. You literally can't do it alone. When people go to church, it shows they connect and associate with other Christians, and it signals to everyone that their faith is genuine. In meeting up, Christians encourage each other, learn more about the faith, and strengthen their relationship with God. Being together prevents people from drifting away. And, of course, it all makes perfect sense, until it doesn't. Hang on a minute. What about just having faith alone? Isn't it enough to just believe? What if worship doesn't actually matter at all? What if you could be a true Christian without ever stepping into a church or saying grace before dinner? That's where this next idea flips the entire debate on its head. Enter Sola Fide, the Latin term for faith alone. We have Martin Luther to thank for making this one famous, but he didn't make it up. Like the churchgoers above, he backed it up with Bible verses. In Ephesians 2:8-9, St. Paul said, "For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." Another of Martin Luther's favourites was in Romans 3:28. St. Paul said, "Therefore we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law." Because of this, many Christians think worship isn't necessary for salvation. They might think it is important and still do want to do it, but at the end of the day, they don't believe it's a deal breaker. And that's the crux of the theological question. So, it's not a black and white issue, is it? And like many verses in the Bible, it is often the case that one verse can seem to contradict another, or be open to different interpretations. With holes in the plot, it's down to who is deciding on the meaning, and who has the authority to define the meaning in the first place. Is it up to you to decide which interpretation is correct? Or does the church decide? And who decides whether it's up to you or the church to decide? The squabbling continues. Let's try putting it to the test. If Sola Fide is true, then we believe that an evil autocratic tech bro could still be a Christian just simply by believing in Jesus, even if he never lifts a finger to help anyone, or even worse, he makes the lives of millions miserable. Meanwhile, the atheist who spends his evenings at the soup kitchen? Sorry mate, but no, you're not coming in. And what about George? He believes in God. He's a kind man, always tips extra, and would do anything for anyone. But he doesn't pray or worship or go to church. If it's about worship, he's out. If it's about faith, he's in. And if being a Christian is living like Jesus, well, maybe he is doing better than some churchgoers. But back to the point. Who decides? Well, no single denomination is a monolith. People from all Christian denominations might have their own beliefs. But there are certain rules of thumb. Here are a few examples. If you're Catholic, Orthodox, or in a high church tradition such as the Anglican Church of England, worshipping together is central to faith. No questions. If you're Evangelical or Protestant, well, worship might be very important, but faith matters more. This is where Sola Fide comes in. So it's not an essential act of faith, but some people might think it's good to do. If you're Quaker or in a liberal Christian tradition, worship can be personal or done together. God is everywhere, not just in church. Worship is essential for Quakers, but they just don't necessarily need to do it together. So if you hold to Sola Fide, worship isn't required at all. It's faith that matters. You might choose to, but you don't need to. So do you need to worship to be a real Christian, or is faith alone enough? There isn't really a right or wrong answer, and ultimately different people have different perspectives. It depends on what you believe and the church you belong to. So, what about you? What do you think?